Most of the horrible crimes and tragedies that the U.S. war on drugs is doing in Latin America and in Mexico and in Bolivia and in Colombia and in Peru and in Central America and in Ecuador and in Caribbean and in Asia and all around the world, from an American perspective, has very little to do with Bolivia and Mexico and Peru and Colombia and all these other countries. It is instead the horrible projection of our own domestic national hysteria about drugs within the United States. We are like, I said this 2 nights ago to some people here, the United States is like the most powerful elephant in the jungle with a disease, the disease of prohibitionism that causes us to thrash about and do crazy things that cause tremendous harms to ourselves as well as to the rest of the world. In the United States, we have almost 500,000 people locked up in our prisons and jails for breaking a drug law. We lock up in America more people for breaking a drug law than all of Western Europe locks up for everything. In fact, I think we lock up more people for drug violations than all of Latin America locks up for everything. We arrest 1.5 million people a year. We give the police and the prosecutors more and more powers every year. We require our children to urinate into bottles. We require people to urinate into bottles to get jobs or to stay in school. We send police officers into our schools to lie to our children about drugs. We spend $40 billion a year directly enforcing our drug laws, taking money away from schools and health care and other things that might actually help people. We persecute and dig into people's past to see if they ever used a drug, and then deny them opportunities. We tell young people that if they have ever been arrested for any and convicted of any drug offense, even the possession of a joint, they will no longer be eligible to get assistance from the government to go to university. If they committed murder or rape, they're still eligible, just so you know. Now, why are we doing this? First, you have to understand that in the United States, the belief in abstinence, the belief in drug-freeness is a quasi-religious imperative. Never forget that in the United States, we had alcohol prohibition. Now, alcohol can be a dangerous drug, but alcohol prohibition? We tend to think, oh, it must have just been that our grandparents or great-grandparents went through a temporary period of insanity, which is why they thought they could prohibit alcohol. But that was not just a temporary insanity. It came from something deep in our culture. The ideology of temperance, of abstinence, which infused the Christian religious movement, some strands, in the United States, is powerful in our society. Indeed, we believe in abstinence as such a religious calling, as such a moral imperative, that we oftentimes put it on a pedestal higher than life itself. There is no other way to explain my own government's tolerance to allow 250,000 Americans, 250,000 Americans, to become infected with HIV/AIDS, simply because the governments could not take the step, like providing clean needles, to stop this epidemic. So for those of you in Latin America who see the tremendous harms committed by my government, rest assured that millions and tens of millions of Americans are suffering extraordinary harms within the borders of the United States. Hundreds of thousands dying of disease caused by prohibitionist policies. Tens of thousands dying of overdoses caused by prohibition policies. Millions spending time behind bars because of prohibitionist policies. Hundreds of billions of dollars spent on a futile campaign because of prohibitionist ideologies. And our challenge in the United States is how to uproot this. Sometimes I hear people in Latin America say, why doesn't America just crack down on its own people more? I'm going to ask you today, stop saying that. The American business community was the most powerful force in ending alcohol prohibition, because the business community is basically about increasing profits. And what they realized about alcohol prohibition was that it was not good for American business, that they had to pay more taxes to try to enforce laws that could not be enforced, while they were deprived of the opportunity of building legitimate businesses. The same thing is true today, even though most businessmen still fear to speak out.